Hi, thanks for checking it out. Today we're going to be putting on a serpentine belt. The serpentine belt on this car needs to be replaced. Let's take a look at it, see why it needs to be replaced, and how it gets done. All right, so let's take a look at this belt. Let's see why we think it needs to be replaced. If you look at it, you see it's a little shiny here. You can see there's a bit of a reflection here. That's when it gets too shiny, it can become too slick, and when it's too slick, it'll allow it to roll on items that it's run backwards. Now, if you look on the water pump right here, you'll see that it runs backwards on the water pump. It's not run by the tooth side. Same thing on the tensioner here. So when it becomes too slick, what will happen is this will be really easy to turn. Now it takes it turning, but it takes an effort for it to turn. If it turns too easy, what will happen is it will cause a squeal. Okay, so these are the kind of things you need to look for. All right? When a belt gets old, what'll happen is actually the slipping of it is what causes the belt to actually start to buff and shine. Okay, take a look at the belt face itself. It looks like it's okay if we look at it like this, but this belt has original numbering on it, which means it's probably an original belt. This is a 2002 Pontiac Grand Prix, a 3.1 liter motor, and if this is an original belt, then that means it's been on here for 12 years. Now, how long is a belt like this supposed to be on here? Well, let's start by getting it off, and then we'll talk about when they say you're supposed to replace this belt. Now, to get access to the belt, the easiest way is to take this expansion tank off. This expansion tank for the cooling system, we get it out of the way, will give us a little bit more room in here. Could you get this belt off with the tank in the way? Sure you could, but why make it harder for you? When it only takes 5 seconds to remove the tank, it'll make your life way easier when it comes to actually working on this belt. I'm going to get out a ratchet, a 10mm socket. I'm going to go ahead and loosen up these nuts. Always put your parts someplace where you're going to find. I'll put them on the cowl sometimes if it's an open cowl like this, but sometimes you'll get cowls that have grooves and holes in it, so not the place you want to put nuts and bolts. Okay, we'll go ahead and remove this. Now you see this little clip right here. We need to go ahead and disengage that, so we take ourselves a flat screwdriver. Just disengage this little plastic clip right here. And that gives us more room now to move this coolant bottle around. Let's set it someplace safe where it's not going to fall over. Okay. As you can see, with more room out of the way, you can see. Now you can see things more clearly. You can see the tensioner. This is the tensioner right here. This is your power steering pump. This is your crank pulley. This is your air conditioning compressor. This is your water pump. If you look here, you'll see a belt diagram, and that belt diagram tells you which way the belt goes. So it's always best to take a look at that at first. So if you look at it, you can see it's actually sitting upside down, with the alternators up here, your crank pulley's down here. Okay, so just want to keep that in mind. If you don't have a diagram, find it in a book, find it online, or draw it out before you take the belt off. There's no point in fighting with the belt trying to put it back on. All right, so you can see the way that this belt runs. We can see the way the belt runs on here, so we're not going to have a problem with this. So now we need to figure out which way to take this tensioner off. So what I like to do is with the automatic tensioners, I like to grab the belt and give it a pull. Okay, when you do that, you can see which way the tensioner has to rotate to take the pressure off. When I pull on it, it's going to rotate in the direction that needs to be removed. So we take our ratchet and we put it on here. Okay, now your instincts are going to be to start way down here like this, but what will happen is when you take the belt off, this is going to extend even more, so you'll end up way down here. So I always like to start with my ratchet sticking straight up if I can. Now sometimes there's going to be stuff in the way and it's almost impossible to do that, and then you can go ahead and do that. Right, now this ratchet right here has an extension on it where you can actually make it longer or shorter. The longer the tool is, the less pressure it will take to rotate to remove the part. Now, to take the belt off, I always like to take it off a small pulley. In this case, we can take it off of our alternator pulley because it's pretty small. It's right on top. So we take this and we add enough pressure to slip the belt off. Okay. Now the belt is off. We go ahead and relieve the tensioner. Now you see how the tensioner is rotating quite a bit. And you see how where it ended up standing straight up. That way there it doesn't end up jammed down where you got to fight with it to get it off. Okay. Sometimes what you'll have to do is you'll have to put the belt back on to reposition the tool to get it off. All right, now the belt is nice and free. Now we can go ahead and unstring it. Okay, take it off the power steering pump. Comes right off the water pump. Slip it around the AC compressor. Slip it off the tensioner. And last but not least, we slip it off the crank pulley. Now we go ahead and we just take it right out. Okay. And now the belt is out. Okay. Take a look at this belt. If we look at it, you can see tiny cracks. These tiny cracks are getting bigger. The bigger the cracks, the worse the belt shape is. We see some shiny stuff in the bottom there, and that's little pieces of glass. And the question is, well, where does glass come from? Well, it comes from sand. Sand gets in there, and then heat melts the sand, and sand becomes glass. So it's one of those things as to why you want to keep those protectors that are down along the bottom here in there, because if you take them out, more sand gets up there. Okay, you're always going to get sand, you're always going to get water. Things are always going to come up there. It's a very harsh environment, which is why they like to keep things sealed under an engine compartment. So to reduce the amount of sand, they give you these little splash shields right here, and that keeps the sand and the water out as best as possible. But again, you're never going to be able to keep it all out of there. Take a look at this belt. You'll see cracks. Now I'm bending it the opposite way that it runs, and I'm doing it in extreme, but you can see cracks. The cracks are not supposed to be there. The cracks come from age and time, but it's not horribly cracked. When we looked at it on the car, we did not see the cracks. We don't see the cracks until we hyperextend the belt. So it's one of those things that you have to ask yourself, when should this belt be replaced or have been replaced? Is it past its due? Well, people looking at it are going to say, no, your belt's fine. Okay? And while it works fine, and no squealing, no problems at all, the car doesn't overheat, doesn't undercharge. All the accessories seem to be turning. When you turn everything on, everything seems to be fine. So the belt is functioning just fine. However, how long is this belt going to last? It's 12 years old. How long is a 12-year-old belt going to last? Well, there is a time. Okay? There is an amount of time a belt will last. So I guess you guys are saying, okay, you're going to tell me how to tell? All right, I'm going to give you the short of it. It's easy to do long. If we look at the data, this is the owner's manual. Okay, the owner's manual is a great place to find information. It never says to replace this belt. It never in this manual ever tells you to replace the belt. The only place this belt is even mentioned in this service manual is right here at the 60,000 mile service when it says inspect engine accessory drive belt. That's all it says is inspect. Never says replace. It just says to inspect it. Never tells you what to look for. Well, that's an owner's manual for you. Owner's manuals are fantastic at getting you to come to the dealer. Okay? This is your run-of-the-mill repair manual that you can get. I got this one online, used. You can see it's in pretty good shape. It is for this car, 88 to 2002. But if you read the above, it's a 90 to 94, an 88 to 96, and an 88 to a 99. And then it says 88 to 2002. Well, does that mean that this book covers 2002 of everything but these vehicles? It doesn't make sense, right? Well, what it is they printed the book, they looked at the vehicle, and they says, you know what, this book will work for this vehicle up to 2002. How accurate is it? Well, when you take old stuff and try to modernize it, there are going to be some significant detail differences, okay? Let's take a look at service intervals. When does it say to check the belt? Well, we know that these owner's manuals said it's 60,000 miles, so at 60,000 miles it says inspect and replace if necessary the timing belt. After 60,000 miles, the timing belt should be inspected every 15,000 miles. Well, this car doesn't have a timing belt, it has a timing chain. Where's the drive belt? Let's see. It's 250 miles, they don't say nothing. 3,000 miles, they don't say nothing. 7,500 miles, they don't say nothing. 15,000 miles, oh, here we go, check drive belt, check C section 22. Alright, well, 15,000 miles, well, it wouldn't hurt to look at it every 15,000 miles. Eventually, you'd get to 60,000 miles at 15. So, that's not too bad. Let's see, 30,000 miles. Doesn't mention anything about the drive belt at 30,000 miles. Now, the thing that upsets me about that, and it's not like, oh God, I'm so upset, but if you got something at 15,000 miles, double that, you're at 30,000 miles, shouldn't you be checking that again? I don't know, I would. 60,000 miles. Again, 100,000 miles. So, maintenance schedule in this book, not so great. Let's go ahead and look at the drive belt section. We look here, we're going to see some stuff here. Now this says acceptable across the V portions. Okay, so they're showing cracks that are worse than the belt that I have. And they're saying that's acceptable. Now they're saying unacceptable if it's missing ribs that are ½ inch or longer. And if you see cracks on the back side of the belt, that's when they say, okay, why don't you go ahead and replace it. The other place where they say is to look at the indicators. Well, the indicators on ours is just like this one here where it's upside down, where you can't really see it without being a contortionist, so that doesn't really work. So, now that we're being vague, and probably not helping you out, resist your temptation to get frustrated. This is from All Data. This is a printed maintenance schedule for this car. And again, at 60,000 miles, it says to inspect the drive belt. And again, inspect it for what? Well, let me go ahead and we look at All Data. What I found was a TSB. And this TSB affects all 2004 and prior passenger cars and trucks, 03 to 04 Hummers. And basically what they're saying here is that this belt is what they are going to call last the life of the vehicle belt, because it's made of a material called EPDM. EPDM is a very strong rubber. Okay, it's much stronger than the stuff they used to use. And what they're saying is that it should not need to be replaced for 10 years or 150,000 miles. Now, you think they'd update the service intervals for that and say, hey, 150,000 miles, maybe you should consider replacing the belt, or 10 years. Again, nothing. It's one of those, it slips through the cracks thing. Alright, the chloroprene-based belts, which are the old belts, should be replaced when you've got cracks 1/8 inch apart all the way around the belt. Okay, those are the old belts, not these belts. They're also neoprene belts, were the old belts. And those are the belts that you replaced all the time. And you'd see them crack at very low miles, and you'd see chunks come out of them. These new belts, which are on a lot of the cars, and again, you're going to want to consult your service manual, your owner's manual for your car, and your service manual for your car, because every car is different. I know there are some car manufacturers out there where the cost of the car is low because they're still using antiquated parts. So, this doesn't really help us as to whether or not this belt needs to be replaced, because again, it's a 12-year-old car. It's working just fine. There are some tools that you could use. There are some tools that you could use. This tool right here is a belt gauge, belt wear gauge. Okay, basically looks like a toothpick. It can be used like a toothpick, right? I wouldn't, but you know, you do what you got to do. And what this does is you set this into this groove, and if it goes down into the groove, it is worn down. If you run your finger across here, and you can feel the plastic above the belt is still good. If it's below the belt, it is no good. If you take a look at this, it is below the belt. Okay, so this belt is no good. This is another one of those ASC things. This is a tool that you'll find questioned on the ASC, and it will basically say, how can you tell if a belt is worn? Use a belt wear tool. Okay, and it actually shows a picture of this tool. This tool is or was available from Gates. They're getting tougher to find. This one was located at ClarkWest. I did find one at Napa one time. So I mean, when I look for these things, it's been getting harder and harder to find these. They're not easy. And And again, CarQuest of Napa. Stop by, call them up, ask them. Do you have a belt wear gauge tool from Gates if you want this one? That's that one. Now, Dayco makes a tool also. Dayco makes this tool. This tool has these teeth right here, and those teeth are used to check the belt grooves. And what you do is you stick this in here, and then you look to see if you can see light and if it will move back and forth. If it does, the belt is no good. Okay? This belt is now good in two ways, with the Gates tool and with the Dayco tool. Okay? This right here goes into the groove just like the other one did. And you can see it. It goes below the spacing. And now finally this window right here goes here, and if you could see more than 4 cracks in this window, and I see several cracks in this window, the belt's no good. So we went from being not sure if this belt was any good to, well, 10 years they say you're supposed to replace it. The belt's 12 years old, so you should replace it, but it doesn't seem to have a problem. Should I replace it? Again, vague. When you get the proper tool and you use the proper training, you now know that this belt is no good. There's no doubt in my mind. This belt is way past its age. Take out the new belt. You see the new belt, much nicer. No glaze, nice and clean. Okay, turn it over. Let's recheck it. Let's put this tooth in here. Look at that. Cannot move it back and forth, nice and tight. Let's go ahead and drop this on here. It's above. You can see it's above the groove. And obviously there's no cracks because it's a brand new belt. Let's go ahead and try it with the Gates tool. Put the Gates tool on here, we can see it is above the tool. Okay, and what you're supposed to do is just put your finger in this hole and push it into the belt. And take your other finger and see if you can feel it. And of course I can feel it this time, and you can hear it this time. You can hear it snapping off and hitting the belt. You can hear it clicking over the belt. Okay, it's over the belt. It's a brand new belt. So obviously this belt is excellent. Next thing I like to do is make sure the belt is the right length. So I step on the new belt, I step on the old belt, I pull it up, and I look to make sure they are the same size. Sure enough, they are the same size. This keeps me from having to fight with it later, because this happens. You'll get a shorter belt. The parts store will look it up, and there'll be a division in the years, and the belt's slightly shorter. So you'll be sitting there fighting with it. They sent me the wrong belt. I picked up the wrong belt. They gave me the wrong belt. The parts stores, you know, everybody in life makes mistakes. All right. Next thing, before we slide this on, let's check the pulleys. Let's make sure they all move smoothly, because now would be the time to check them. Okay, alternator, nice and smooth. Water pump, nice and smooth, and it doesn't spin too much. A water pump, when you turn it, should turn and then stop pretty quickly like it's doing. And the reason why is there's a seal that runs up against it. And when that seal becomes hard and no good, or starts to become no good, this pulley will just continue to spin and spin and spin and spin and spin. So we want it to just rotate and stop, okay? Let's go ahead and check the tensioner. Let's rotate it, and you're going to hear dingy, dingy, dingies. That's not good. It's more play than I want to see. The bearing runs smooth. But you see that pulley? See how it's moving back and forth? So I may want to consider replacing this tensioner. I'm not going to today, because again, I haven't had any problems, but I'm going to keep it in mind. And, possibly replace it someday in the future. All right, let's rotate the AC compressor. And the last one you can't rotate because that is the crank pulley. Okay, let's also rotate the, again, check it for looseness. We're moving it back and forth. We're trying to see if it wobbles this way, up and down, and then rotate it and feel for any problems with the bearing. If there's a problem with the bearing, you'll feel it. You'll feel it. It'll kind of be rough, or it'll rotate and it'll get rough and then rotate and then it'll get rough. And they all run pretty smooth. This shakiness right here is the starts of a bearing going bad. So That's why we check it, because now I know. When I'm stuck on the side of the road, because I didn't replace my tensioner, it's my fault. And yes, this is my car. Okay. Let's go ahead and drop the belt on. Okay. Slide it around there. We slide it around there. We slip it around the tensioner. We slip it around the back side of the water pump. We slip it around the power steering pump. We make sure they go into the pulleys, because if they don't go into the pulleys, we'll have problems later. The belt will either pop off, shred, and possibly destroy itself, which is not a good thing to do to a new belt. We grab our tool, we pop it on here. Now, you'll see different tools to remove these tensioners. This one happens to be a 3/8. These happen to be a 3/8 slot, which is what you can use your 3/8 ratchet for. Okay, it just goes in there. Sometimes there'll be a nut. Sometimes this section right here will be a little smaller, and you just put a wrench on here. That wouldn't work for this one, because when it hyperextends that way, it's going to end up jamming it. But sometimes you put a wrench here. Sometimes there's a bolt that holds the pulley on back here. That goes on here. It's going to vary from car to car. This is this car. This is a very common engine for GM. So if you have this car, I hope this helps. If it's a different car with a different belt setup, because not all of them are going to be this automatic tensioner that this car has. Some you have to manually tighten yourself to tension it. And that's a completely different animal. And there'll be future videos on how to do those. If there's something that you want to see, please let me know, because I will try to help you out. If you tell me what you want, I will help you out. Okay? I will see if I can find a car or a similar car. Alright, so the belt is back on. Everything looks good. Let's put our hand down here, make sure this is in the groove. Doesn't hurt to stick our fingers down there one time. Okay, we can see that everything else is in the groove. That's the only one I can't see readily. Okay. That's in the groove, that's in the groove. That's on the back side. Okay, let's see if we can spin this. Yeah, as you can see, I can still spin it. It just takes a little bit more effort. Let's go ahead and slide the coolant bottle back on. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and put this back in. Again, we don't want to spill it. There's a little groove. A little tiny groove down there that this goes into. This little plastic ball right here goes into this spot right here. So we're going to make sure that goes into there. Like that. Put the nuts back on. Close this, clip it up, and now the next thing we do is you run it to make sure the belt doesn't come flying off, make sure there's no noises, make sure this new belt works good. Okay? Well, that's it. We replaced the drive belt. I had fun doing it. I enjoy working on cars. It's one of the things I've always enjoyed doing. It's why I decided to do it for a living. Maybe somebody out there want to do it for a living. Watch my videos, subscribe, hopefully teach you a few things, and hopefully we can have a little fun together. Thank you.